Good evening, class. So today I want to go over the juvenile justice system. The reason I want to go over the juvenile justice system, I want us to have a better comprehension of the effect it has on our generation, especially within our society right now, currently. So not just for our generation really, but also for the upcoming generation and the generation after that and the generation after that. So, first thing I want to ask is, has anyone ever kind of thought about what happens to a minor when they commit a crime, or like what makes their situation different from ours who are adults? So, for starters, a minor is an individual who is under the age of 18, and they actually have a completely different system. As stated before, it's the juvenile justice system. So this system isn't like the adult system. It's not to punish the youth, but instead it's to actually reform them and rehabilitate them, guide them, aid them as much as possible. It's to basically help them to get back on track for their life, to give them a second chance before they get older into their adulthood. And so today I'll basically be sharing what the juvenile justice system is, how it works, what's the structure, how it operates, why it matters, and even the effect that it has on, like I said before, the youth today in our society. So first and foremost, the juvenile justice system is a legal framework process that is focused more so on minors, as stated before, individuals that are under the age of 18, who break the law or commits any type of criminal acts or crimes or anything like that. So for starters, unlike us who would have to go to an adult court, the juvenile would end up going to juvenile court. And so instead of criminal court, basically. And so they're basically they're kind of like held in contempt or whatever, but they instead stay at a juvenile detention center, unlike how an adult would have to stay at a jail or a prison. So what these centers do, they basically focus on reforming and rehabilitating the youth instead of any long-term punishment. And so minors also get special protections, like for instance their files, like any of their criminal files or records or anything like that, they're actually sealed off until they're like 18, so that way when they go into adulthood they kind of get like a fresh start and everything is, smooth sailing after that. So then how the process works, the process is kind of similar to how it would go for us adults, but it's a little different. So the first part of the process would be the intake. So the intake is when a probation officer or a prosecutor, they're the ones to decide if the minor's case, if it should either go to court or if it should be handled through like counseling or some type of community services. Next would be the detention hearing. This is when the judge then comes in, and they're the ones that decide if the minor is either to stay at the juvenile detention facility or if they'll be released to go home. Then after that comes the adjudication, which is kind of like a trial, but it's when the judge decides the guilt of the minor, and it's more informal in a way. Then lastly is disposition. So if the minor is to be guilty, the judge will then give like a sentence, and that sentence could usually consist of the minor having to go to therapy, being on probation, or even having time at the juvenile detention facility. So unlike the adult system, the process, like I said before, is focused more so on giving the youth more rehabilitation options, like as stated before, also therapy, education program, mental health services. And this is a way for them to be able to learn, grow, and to make better choices on their own for their future. So I know you're probably sitting there asking, okay, so why does it matter? We're grown, we're adults. The truth of the matter though is because this can have an effect on our generation and the ones coming after us. So many kids today, especially ones that are in more of like the under-resourced environments or marginalized communities, they end up having a target on their back and they end up going through this system. So this system is there to basically give them a second chance, but it also helps to it also helps to guide them, to aid them, but not to harm them. And if we're the ones who don't care about the fairness and their rehabilitation, then the system could fail, possibly. And that would then trap the youth, the upcoming youth, in a cycle of endless crime instead of actually helping to improve. And so if we don't fix this, then who will? So then comes the effects of the juvenile justice system. So some of these effects consist of developmental differences, meaning like teens, like for instance, sometimes teenagers, they can be impulsive, because, and that's only because their brains are still in the moment of developing, especially one central part of our brain that actually helps us with decision making skills. And so over time it can change and they can grow. Another effect is racial disparities. Usually the youth who are Black, Latino, or Hispanic, they're overrepresented in the system. So reforms are actually in effect to make things more fair for them and make it more equal for them. And then lastly, also recidivism, which is just basically repeat offending. So when programs actually focus on mental health, substance abuse treatments, and mentorships, kids are actually less likely to be repeat offenders compared to just simply locking them up. And so, like I said before, the system isn't about letting kids off easy, but instead it's about helping them to avoid a lifetime of crime and also failure. So overall, and taking everything into consideration, the juvenile justice system, it plays a major role in giving the youth a second chance at life. Whether, it doesn't matter if you go into law, social work, education, law enforcement, it's just great to know that this system is there to help us to understand how to protect our young people's futures. Because once again, if we don't care about them, then who will? So thank you for attending today's class, and I hope you have a great one.